And I want to talk to you about something that is really important. I'm going to read something to you. I'm not going to necessarily go extemporaneously at the start because I want to make sure that I lay the proper foundation to what we're going to talk about. And that is giants that must be conquered. Things that have to be conquered. Things that you don't have a choice of whether or not that you want to conquer them. You actually have to, or they will conquer you. I was just talking to Barry just a second ago up here, and we were talking about health, and that is this, is that even in the healing of your body, no matter where that is, you have to push through to health on your body, or else sickness will push upon you. You either face off with it, or it's going to come at you. And so there are giants that must be conquered for all of us. Every one of us have giants that speak to us every day. There really isn't much choice because those giants don't seem to go away. It doesn't matter where you're from. It really doesn't. The only reason why that anybody feels funny about thinking about where they're from is only because they're not from another place. You know, if I actually lived in another country today, I would actually feel bad because I would think that I would be I was not on top of things and I wasn't able to get where I wanted to go because of where I was from, and there was a certain level of things that were locked out from me just because of where I was from, and I had to overcome that. I had to overcome that giant. I had to overcome those thoughts. I had to overcome those voices that I was facing. No matter where you're from, you have issues. No matter what you face, whether it's health in your body, whether it's insanity, whether it has to do with your mental challenges, whether it has to do with something in your family, no matter where you're from or on the job, there are always things that are going to talk. And so let me read to you what I've written here for you. I said, in our culture, we are consistently marketed to wherever we go. The media, advertising, billboards, email, Twitter, Facebook, commercials, and the like. All of these things vie for our attention, almost without relief. Their constant whispers so loud that we're rarely left alone. However, even with the endurance the media possesses, there is still a louder, more persistent conversation going on inside of each of us. This conversation is full of renegade thoughts that race through our minds without warning and certainly without our approval. They just happen. If there is anyone that's denying these mental battles, the only person that you're fooling is yourself. And the only one happy about your attempt to cover up these also disappointing struggles is the one who gave them to you. If the fear of embarrassment can keep you from admitting your struggle, it will also keep you from deliverance. Now let me stop right there and let me hack into what I've just said, just because of the last statement. Many times what people really believe is that it is very, very important for them to be very candid and very open with everyone else inside of their lives concerning their own faith, concerning the things which they face. After all of these years of empirical or comparative evidence, I believe that that is wrong. And I'll tell you why that it's wrong. Let's just say that you had an issue that you were really uncertain about with someone else. You had this thing and you were facing off with it, and you were doing the best that you could do. The facts that you were actually believing you could not necessarily really prove, but you thought that somehow, some way, that there was a possibility that those things were true. And so what you did was you actually began to go and talk to people about the challenge that you had. I'll never forget a number of years ago when Linda and I went over to Oral and Evelyn Roberts' house. And they said as soon as we opened the door, said, "Oh, we're just so happy. We're just so happy. We're just so happy. We're so happy." And they told us of a situation that they were really happy about. And they said, "I'm really so glad that they got all of that off of their chest." And inside my mind, I thought, you know something? They may have gotten it off their chest, but now it's on the chest of millions of others. Do you realize that sometimes when what you do is that you want to tell everything that has gone on inside of your life, when you tell someone else, you actually have not really helped yourself, and you certainly didn't help them. You truthfully actually harmed them. Because you gave them an understanding about something that you truly admitted, and there is a truth to confessing your faults one to another and praying for one another that you may be healed. That's absolutely true. But you know, the Bible, right previous to that particular verse, talks in James chapter 5, verses 14 and 15, where it says, "Is any sick among you? Let him call for" who? Okay, when he is continuing to talk about the elders of the church, when he is talking to you about confessing your faults to one another. He's not talking about what you do is that you go tell a coworker, someone that actually has a less clearance in a business other than you, all about the challenges that you have with the people who are running the business. Because that person has absolutely no clue about what you're saying. They don't understand your plight, as well as they don't even understand your knowledge. And when you say that to them, you actually may feel better by telling someone, but you've actually created a problem for the person that you told. Do you understand that? Yes. So that's the reason why that I believe that. Now, it's really true, and this is true about females. Males don't want to know anything. We don't care. It's just forget about it. You know, we're just part of forget about it. Hey, don't care about it. How are we going to do from today? Are we going to go on from where we are? Females want to know everything. As a general rule. Okay? Well, no, that's not true about me. No, wait a second. I know it's not true about you, sweetie. I get it. It's not true about you. It's only true about the girl sitting next to you. It's not true about you. I get it. Okay, don't worry about it. It's fine. Forget about it, right? Forget about it. So you need to understand that each species has a particular propensity. It's got a bent. And that bent is that females want to know all of the information. Where did it come from? Came from the garden. It's not you personally. It's just part of being a parakeet. You know? I mean, if you're a parakeet, you're a parakeet. You're not a canary. How many of you remember the story of the ugly duckling? Remember the story of the ugly duckling? Well, yeah, that ugly duckling tried to be a duck for so long when it was a what? See, it wasn't a duck. No matter how hard it tried to be a duck, it would always feel that it was ugly. But the moment that it discovered that it was a swan was the moment that it was actually free to become graceful. So there are things in life that you need to make sure that you go to the proper people in order to be able to disseminate the information. You understand that? Yes. That's really true. Now, I don't want to create any greater challenges for my wife over certain things that happen. Because they're in process. I won't hold anything from her. I don't lie to her. I tell her. In my mind, I tell her everything. In her mind, that may not necessarily be true. In my mind, it's something that I'm working in. It's something that I'm working through. It's something that I'm trying to make happen. And as soon as I get really down to where, the nitty-gritty of it all, as soon as I get down to it, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make sure that she understands everything, and she understands it in a finished sense. It's like someone who actually says to you that they don't want to talk, or they don't want to talk to you, or they don't want to show you something until it's finished. When it's finished, they go, I have a surprise for you, but I'm not going to show you until it's really ready for me to show you. When it's ready, I'm going to show you. Same thing as in information. When I get down to the place to where I've gotten rid of all the stuff, I got rid of all the leaves off the ground, I got everything taken care of, then we can discuss it all because now I can see it clearly. Now, who is that sang that song? Who sang that? I can see what? Who sang that song? Who? I can see clearly now? No, that was a boy. Wasn't a girl. She sang it. She sang it also? Okay, that's great. I didn't like how she sang it anyway. If otherwise, I would have listened to her. I mean, there was a guy that did that. No kidding. And so that whole thing is true. And I said all of that only to be able to help you understand, because it is true that unless you're willing to admit your struggle, but you have to admit it in the correct place, because unless you do, it will keep you from being delivered from the very thing that is now controlling your life. And that's a very important thing. Do you understand that? So unfortunately, unlike the media, we cannot simply disconnect. We can't turn these thoughts off, or we can't cast them out. What we can do is realize that two things were not made new when our spirit was. Number one was our what? Our body. The second was our what? Our mind. So the two things did not get saved when I did. My body didn't get saved, and my mind didn't get saved. Both of these have loud voices, and they are battling for control over your heart. They're battling for control over your direction. Your body has a voice. It's called feelings and emotions. Like a toddler throwing a temper tantrum, it insists on being heard, and it still has some shocking desires that you do not truly want. There are certain things. How many of you have had a desire that you don't want? But you say, well, now that's like kind of a desire. Now, shouldn't I want my desire? No. There are desires that you have that you don't really want. There are things that you want that you don't want. It's almost like that statement of, I can believe that you said that, but I can't believe that you said that. It's the very same statement. You know, there are things that you want, but you don't really want them. You just kind of like want them. You're figuring out in your mind, and isn't it funny about our minds? We're trying to figure out how to get the very things that we think that we want, and realizing that we know that we don't want them. Now, just because I'm telling you the way that you think, don't think that that's funny, but that's true about everybody. There isn't anyone that's not underneath that. So, understand this. In the book of Romans, chapter 7, verse number 15, the Bible tells us this. He said, I don't really understand myself. I don't get me. I don't understand me. And this is really important, and I need to say this even from a couple of, oh, actually, not a couple, one comment I got from something that I said this morning. And I just want to let you know, the only thing that is important to me is a biblical culture. I don't care about anything else but a biblical culture. All of the rest of the stuff, I don't care about. Because next year at this time, things are going to be different than they were this year at this time. And they're certainly different than they were last year at this time. Isn't that true? Yes. Yeah, it's really true. So I don't like, if I'm wrong about something, I'm wrong. Hey, I was just wrong. While at the same time, I don't like to be wrong. I don't like it. I don't like the idea. You know what it is? I live my life trying not to have to ask you to forgive me. I got no trouble doing it. Because forgiveness is the very thing that clears all judgment. Like if you say that you forgave someone for something, then why in the world are you walking around with all that bitterness? Because you didn't forgive them. You said you did. Well, yeah, but just because I forgave him doesn't mean I necessarily have to feel like I did. I get it, but your mouth needs to know it too. Oh, listen, I'm right about this, so don't even think about it. So he says here, for I want to do what's right, but I don't do it. Instead, I'm doing what I hate. Man, I get myself into this. Now I'm over in your yard now, right? I'm right there. I'm over in your yard. Okay, verse number 16. He said, but if I know that what I'm doing is wrong, this shows that I agree that the law is good. I know that I'm doing the wrong thing. I know what God wants is right. Verse 19, I want to do what's good, but I don't. I don't want to do what is wrong, but I do it anyway. He said, but if I do what I don't want to do, I'm not really the one doing wrong. It is sin living in me that does it. Now, all of this becomes very, very not only elementary, but it actually is only for those who will receive it. The moment that a person tries to receive this and actually twist it in order for them to be able to do all of those dastardly deeds that their flesh wants them to do is the moment that it doesn't work for you. It only works in the environment of the sincere. It never works in the environment of the one who thinks that he's tricking the system. It really is. I'll tell you about yourself. When you go down a street and you see someone actually who's there who has put out a cup in order for you to be able to put money in it. I don't like the term begging, but I guess that's what you really understand it to be. So let's call it at that. Let's just call it. So you go down Michigan Avenue and you see all of these people begging. Well, I've been taking some of my flights, and I'll take one tonight, but I've been taking some of my flights from Midway, and not from Harry. And so I'm taking some of my flights from Midway, and I notice that there's a girl that actually works in between on Southwest Highway. She works in between State Road from Ridgeland to Cicero. That's her beat. Now, the only problem is that this girl is begging designer style. She begs designer style. Her backpack is designer. Her jeans are designer. Everything about her is designer. Now, she must really have a good business in order for that to work for her. But what happens is that I have in my mind a person who has needs, and I now become suspicious after what I've done is I've made a decision to help every person that I come in contact with who is like that. Now what it is now I'm questioning what her motives really are. So the moment that I question what someone's motives is the moment that I become disconnected from the idea of me helping the disenfranchised and the disadvantaged. But people actually make you do that. They force you into that place where you become insincere in your relationship with God and how you really work out that in your everyday life. So he said here, but if I do what I don't want to do, now I'm telling you, people that are insincere that look at this particular verse actually say, well, then that means that I can do whatever I want to do, and I can do whatever I feel is necessary for me to do, and it's no big deal because it's not me, it's the sin that dwells inside me. But oh, no. Because if you don't resist the devil doesn't what? Flee. He doesn't flee from you. And so in most cases, and this is one of the things that we had kind of an issue with, but Pastor Nancy came to me, or just talked to me yesterday, and she was telling me about a youth leader in one of the churches in our area here. And they came out and said, or she mentioned to me that one of her children actually is a teacher in a community college in the area. And as they're this teacher, they actually have someone who's preaching Jesus inside the class, and so they decided what they wanted to do was to be able to have a discussion about Jesus just as well. I mean, hey, if there's another Christian in class, you want to know who they are, right? And so this person was very, very open about the fact that they have chosen an alternative lifestyle with all the trimmings. Now, I kind of have a challenge with that. And so do you. And you're waiting for what I'm going to say next. but I'm not, because David's trying to make sure that I don't say anything that is really going to offend anybody. But don't think for a moment that an individual who chooses different things than they should actually gets what they think they're getting. There's a difference in between being captured by a sin and then wearing something as a badge. Do you understand that? There's completely different. And so but if I do what I don't want to do, and this was what was happening in the Apostle Paul's life. He said, if I do what I don't want to do, I am really not the one doing wrong. Because that's absolutely true. Here inside your mind, you're having all of these challenges over the fact that this is not what I want to do. It's not what I stand for. It's not what I want. This isn't what I want. He said, so thus, it must be the sin that lives inside me doing the work that it does. Do I have verse 21 there? No, Romans 8:6. He said, if you keep your mind, I tried to keep this shorter, but it's not working already. He said, but if you keep your mind on the things your bodies want to do, he said, you'll die. But if you keep your mind on the things the Spirit wants, you'll live and you'll have peace. Then what he says, and that is from the Worldwide English New Testament, so our mind has a voice that speaks even louder than our body. And a majority of those thoughts do not have God as their source. We can be confident that every destructive thought comes directly or indirectly from hell itself. Please remember this, and I've mentioned this to you several times before, is that thoughts are the rudders on a ship which glide you through the sea by cutting the water in two, or those that dash your hopes upon a rock. So let's take a look and see what Jesus had to say about this subject. He said, these words that I speak to you are not incidental additions to your life. He said, they're or homeowner improvements to your standard of living. He said, they're foundational words, words to build a life on. If you work these words into your life, you're like a smart carpenter who built his house on a solid rock. He said, rain poured down, the river flooded, a tornado hit, but nothing moved that house because it was fixed to the rock. He said, but if you just use my words in Bible studies, he said, if you just use those words in Bible studies and you don't work them into your life, you're like a stupid carpenter who built his house. He spent all this time building his house, but yet he built it on the sandy beach. That when a storm rolled in and the waves came up, it collapsed like a house of cards. How many times have we seen that just in the pictures that they show us when storms roll in to the shores, whether they be hurricanes or whether they just be thunderstorms and the mudslides that people have. You see, when Jesus concluded his address, the crowd burst into applause. They had never heard teaching like this. It was apparent that he was living everything that he was saying. Quite a contrast to their religious teachers. This was the best teaching that they had ever heard. So now please remember this. Abraham succumbed to the giant of impatience. You called him Ishmael. Moses succumbed to the giant of frustration. He struck the rock. Samson succumbed to the giant of seduction. Her name was Delilah. David succumbed to the giant of comfort. Remember, at the time when the kings go out to battle, David remained at home. Elijah succumbed to the giant of depression and said, I just want to die. Jonah succumbed to the giant of resentment. You're going to forgive them anyway. Why should I preach to them? Why should I preach to them? You're going to forgive them. I know you, God. Peter succumbed to the giant of overconfidence when he thought, I'll never leave you. Demas succumbed to the giant of this world. And the Bible says in 2 Timothy 4:10, where the Apostle Paul said, for Demas hath forsaken me. having loved this present world, and departed unto Galatia. So here are 5 giants that must be conquered. I'm trying this 5 thing again only because I didn't do very good on it this morning, and now I'm going to try tonight. Number 1 is the giant named pride. He's a giant that must be destroyed. He cannot live in your life. So pride occurs the moment man steals from God his right. It happens in a flash. Pride occurs the moment man steals from God his right to determine the difference between right and wrong, good and bad, and true and false. As I was approached by those individuals this morning who wanted to speak with me, I attempted to be able to escape from the sanctuary and never made it quite to the back door. I thought I had been released to freedom before I was halted. And there was much of our time together had to do with, and I have no trouble in saying this, so please don't you have trouble with it either. Interestingly enough, people most often are not interested in facts. They're interested in opinions. They're interested in an opinion that you have. They're not interested in any facts that go along with the matter. People also want to take everything that they know and they want to make it bigger than it really is. Because what that does is that really sheds a light, not on necessarily how something had an origin, but actually on what people want something to say. That was the very thing that happened in the garden. Here it was that God wanted the man and the woman to actually dress the garden and keep it. He wanted them to be the landscapers of the garden. Keep the trees trimmed, make sure that they were able to enjoy everything that was going on in the garden except for...
If you are in the Chicago area, we would love for you to join any of our services. We have a 5 p.m. service on Saturdays, and on Sundays we have a 9:30 a.m. and 5 p.m. service. We also have midweek services on Wednesday at 7:15 p.m. at locations around Chicago and Northwest Indiana. To find out more about FHC, like us on Facebook or go to our website at FHClife.org. To partner with RTM, visit robthompson.org/partner or call our office at 708-614-6000. We look forward to seeing you very soon.